amidst the cacophony of life, marketplace, where people are all too eager to broadcast their nights of carnal indulgence, the sordid details of their family drama, or macro-political conspiracies that have nothing to do with their daily bread. There is one subject relegated to the shadows. When the conversation turns to the figures in a bank account at month's end, everyone suddenly adopts a pious silence. We call it discretion, etiquette, or corporate culture. But culture is rarely an organic birth. It is a construct forged by those in power to sustain their reign. What we label privacy is often the invisible tether binding the masses to a predetermined order, where the ignorance of the many fuels the profit of the few. Observe the mechanics of industrial smiles and cold handshakes within glass towers. Why does a society obsessed with transparency, where surveillance cameras monitor every corner and behavioral data is harvested by the second, treat income disclosure as the ultimate taboo? It isn't out of a respect for privacy. Privacy perished the moment we traded our personal data for the pittance of free digital utilities. The true motivation is fear. The employer's fear that the flock will realize they are being fleeced at different rates, and the worker's fear of discovering their worth is less than that of the person sitting at the next desk. The cardinal rule of any negotiation is information asymmetry. He who knows more wins. In the high-stakes game of wages, the scales are tipped entirely to one side. Imagine a game of poker where the house sees every hand, yet each player is restricted to their own cards and strictly forbidden from speaking to their neighbor. The house knows precisely who is bluffing and who is trembling. They know the exact breaking point of every employee, the absolute minimum required to buy 8 golden hours of a human life. Conversely, workers enter the negotiation room blindfolded. They clutch a vague abstraction called the market rate, a figure often manipulated by corporate-funded surveys. When you are blind to what others earn, your ability to value yourself is neutralized. Salaries are accepted not because they are fair, but out of the paralyzing fear that demanding more will simply hand your seat to someone else. Salary silence acts as a potent sedative, maintaining a facade of stability. It stifles comparison, and without comparison, there is no discontent, or at least no foundation for discontent to manifest as action. Imagine a morning where the entire company payroll is leaked. The power structure would collapse instantly. A 10-year veteran would be driven to madness, seeing a fresh graduate start on a higher salary than they currently earn after a decade of meager raises. The diligent worker would despair seeing the office sycophant, skilled only in flattery and brewing tea, receive a bonus twice their size. This naked truth would shatter the illusion of merit-based pay. In reality, wages aren't paid for ability. They are paid for negotiation leverage and the desperation of the firm at the hour of hiring. An incompetent candidate who demands a premium when the company is short-staffed will always be valued more than a loyal, submissive talent. The salary confidentiality policy is the most ingenious divide and rule tool ever devised. It transforms colleagues, who should be allies in defending their common interests, into clandestine rivals. In the absence of data, imagination takes over, conjuring the most paranoid or delusional scenarios. Suspicion takes root. Instead of uniting for a better standard, people scrutinize one another. If one suspects their neighbor earns more, resentment is born. But ironically, that resentment is rarely directed at the paymaster who created the inequity. Instead, it is aimed at their own kind. The sheep butt heads for a better position at the trough, while the shepherd watches from above, smiling as he tallies the profits. Class conflict is masterfully redirected into petty personal squabbles. Look closer at the ritual of periodic performance reviews. They are often little more than clumsy theater staged to legitimize figures already hard-coded into a spreadsheet in the finance department. A manager summons an employee to a private room, shuts the door, and whispers of modest raises, always accompanied by the caveat, "This is a special increase just for you. Don't tell anyone." That mantra, "Don't tell anyone," strokes the ego, deluding the listener into believing they are favored or exceptional. It fosters a false sense of complicity between the boss and the subordinate. In reality, that same script is recited to 10 other people that same day. Secrecy makes the individual feel they've secured a bargain, when in fact, they've all been bought cheap. It prevents the verification of truth. If two people knew they were both special, the lie would be exposed. But as long as both remain as silent as clams, the lie remains the truth. Furthermore, this veil of secrecy masks subtle patterns of discrimination. Bias regarding gender, race, age, or mere personal whims dictates the numbers in an account, yet these factors never appear on paper. Were this information public, it would spark lawsuits, strikes, and demands for equality. But in the shadows, injustice is safe. A woman performing the same labor with the same proficiency as her male counterpart will never know enough to demand justice. She will continue to believe she is being treated fairly, or worse, blame herself for not working hard enough. The deprivation of information turns the victim into their own accuser. The system is engineered to protect the powerful while lulling the weak with dreams of meritocracy, all while the scales of value were rigged from the start. Even the common advice to focus on your own work rather than others' pay is a form of populist propaganda. It sounds virtuous, draped in the philosophy of inner peace, but in the realm of behavioral economics, it is the most foolish advice a worker can take. The labor market is, after all, a market. Prices are dictated by supply, demand, and, crucially, information. How can you price your labor accurately if you are ignorant of the actual transactions happening in your own workplace? Turning a blind eye to the income of your peers is equivalent to disarming yourself of your most potent negotiating tool. It reduces workers to unthinking machines, racing toward KPIs set by others without ever questioning the true value of the sweat they expend. Observe those who have just entered the fray. They are frequently the ones who disrupt the established wage structure. To poach talent from competitors, companies offer exorbitant salaries that far outstrip those of long-term employees in identical roles. This is the loyalty paradox. The longer you stay, the more your relative value diminishes. Veteran salaries typically crawl upward with inflation or symbolic increments, while new hire rates keep pace with the market. If this were common knowledge, it would trigger a mass exodus. Long-term staff would realize their loyalty is being taxed to subsidize the company's stability. Consequently, the code of silence is enforced with increasing severity. Confidentiality clauses grow thicker, and the threat of termination for disclosing a bonus hangs over every head like a sword of Damocles. This division transcends the individual, fracturing entire departments. Sales views tech with disdain, assuming they merely coast on the labor of others, while tech reviles sales for being little more than silver-tongued smooth-talkers. The lack of transparency regarding interdepartmental bonuses builds walls that stifle empathy and cooperation. Each department becomes an isolated fiefdom, guarding its own interests rather than pursuing a collective goal. Once again, the employer is the sole beneficiary. Conflict between departments consolidates the power of the central executive. They become the arbiters, the supreme judges holding the scales of justice, conveniently ignoring the fact that they were the ones who unhinged the scales in the first place. Yet, one should not be so naive as to believe that total salary transparency is a universal panacea. In a society where human worth is ruthlessly distilled into numbers, such openness brings its own psychological toll. Egos are bruised, envy becomes overt, and fragile social bonds can shatter. Humanity is perhaps not yet mature enough to confront the raw reality that they may be valued less than their peers. Thus, they retreat into silence as a defense mechanism. Many would prefer the comfort of a peaceful illusion over the agony of a harsh truth. Employers understand this psychology perfectly. They don't just use rules to enforce silence. They exploit human frailty and vanity to maintain the veil. They plant the seed that a low salary is a mark of shame or personal failure, ensuring the victim remains their own jailer. Ultimately, it all reverts to the cold calculus of self-interest. A system designed to maximize capital will always seek to minimize labor costs. The most cost-effective way to suppress wages is not through direct cuts, but by throttling the flow of information. Keep the masses in the dark, keep them suspicious of one another, and keep them preoccupied with petty comparisons in the shadows so they never see the grand design. The code of silence is not about respect. it is about control. The puppets continue their feverish dance on the stage of life, their strings concealed by confidentiality agreements, while the only applause comes from those tallying the profits earned from the naivety of the working class. To escape this matrix, one must either break the silence and face the fallout of the truth, or accept their role as a blind cog in a vast machine grinding away until they are replaced by a newer, cheaper, and, naturally, more secretive part.